There are times in every one of our lives where we reach a point of a critical decision. Places where that decision we make will have a huge impact and effect for the rest of our lives. Whether it's a fork in the road or a T in the intersection of life, we have to make a choice of whether we go to the right, whether we go to the left, or whether we just stop. You see, when a jetliner reaches a runway speed of 120 miles an hour, it's got to either commit or stop. A critical decision for a young man to get on a knee and pop a question, and that bride-to-be to make a critical decision to say yes. You see, when it's 4th and 1 and you're down by 5, coach got to make a decision, and he's either a hero or a zero. Whether it's a new job, a career change, a move, the choice of college, when to start a family, whatever it might be, those are all critical points of decision. And how we respond to those points of decision, those critical points, oftentimes shapes our entire life. I want you to think about this. There was a critical decision made, and the world was changed forever because of a decision made by Adam and Eve. When Adam and Eve made the decision to doubt God's word and believe a lie and disobey his word, sin entered into the world. Perfection was lost. Perfection was destroyed. And they are banished now to live a life of sin. But praise be to God that another critical decision has been made. That God, out of his infinite love for us, made the decision to send his son. For God so loved the world that he sent his only son. He sent his son into our world to die our death, to rise victoriously so that we might live in him, defeating sin, death, and the evil one, and have victory in our lives. Till one day he brings us home to himself. But until that time, he invites us to have this abundant life in him. And so this morning, we are embarking upon a journey. And we're asking God to show up in immeasurably more ways than we could ever ask or imagine. As Glory Day faces a critical decision in the ministry of the next generation of people who will not only come through these doors, but go out into our community. A critical decision to take a strategic step that focuses on our kids, our students, and our families, that we pray God will continue to use Gloria Day in the next 50 years for Kingdom Impact. You see, we are standing under the shade of trees that were planted for us 50 years ago. Kingdom Impact, this congregation, 50 plus years now, what does it look like 50 years from here? That we might have Kingdom Impact not only in this congregation, but in our community. And the spaces where we live, where we work, where we learn, where we play, where we gather. When I first arrived here at Gloria Day in 2013, there was a concerted effort to rebuild the family of Gloria Day. There was a very intentional approach of helping one another live life with Jesus every day. Some of you know what I'm talking about, others you don't, that's fine. But Gloria Day experienced an incredibly challenging season of ministry. And Gloria Day made a critical decision to bring some, younger guy from a little town in Peachtree City, Georgia, south of Atlanta, from a much smaller congregation to take on the mantle of leadership here at Gloria Day. I was called to serve here at Gloria Day from a wonderful congregation of 400 incredible people to a congregation of incredible people, but of 2,600. I had no idea what that meant. But I was to continue that healing and set Gloria Day on a vision to make kingdom impact in our community. For over 18 months when I first got here, I spent a lot of time building relationships and learning the ministry of Gloria Day. I will tell you during that time, God's favor and blessing continued to shower down on the people and ministry of Gloria Day. There was an incredible amount of healing that took place. And it was time to then build on the one another. And I asked the board if we could shift our mission statement to one word, to expand now what we're already doing within Gloria Dei to beyond Gloria Dei. And I asked if we could just make a simple shift in our mission statement from helping one another to helping more people live life with Jesus every day. That shift would say to continue to take care of one another, but expand the ministry to help more people live life with Jesus every day. And so that decision helped us call a church planner. We planted a church in League City. South Lake is now its own chartered congregation. I shifted one of our staff members from their position to what we call serving beyond. Their job was to completely focus on the outside. And then we started on the course of building a discipling culture here at Gloria Dei. Pastor Brian Weaver started that process, and then as God called him to Peace Lutheran Church in Hurst, Texas, we brought on Jason Phelps as discipling director. And then this wonderful thing called a pandemic happened. But through that whole time, we have been focused on building intentional discipling culture at Gloria Dei. And we are now beginning to see the fruit of these endeavors in the hearts and lives of those who have engaged and started the journey with us. And so as we continue to build that discipling culture, we believe now is the next step to focus on our kids and student ministries. Y'all, our children are dealing with so much more than we ever had to deal with. The issues that they are facing in terms of identity, in terms of mixed messages, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of the pressures of social media, things that we can't even fathom. We believe that Gloria Dei must speak into equipping families. We believe the church has to speak truth from God's word into an ever-changing culture, that there is truth that will set us free. And there is clarity in God's word. And if the church isn't doing it to our kids, who's going to? And I believe it's important that the church supports mom and dad or grandparents in the faith formation in the home. It's not our job, it's to partner alongside the home, to face this culture and live a biblical, Christ-centered life. This is a critical decision for the life of Gloria Dei, as we're building a pipeline of growth in our kids and students. We're intentionally focusing on kindergarten through grade 4. Not excluding anybody else, but to build a pipeline of students that will then, as we grow K through 4, it flows into 5th and 6th, it flows into 7th and 8th, it flows into high school and beyond. And so to do that, we brought on Audrey Densey-Werner, our Director of Family Life. Very intentional decision to bring a seasoned master DCE on board to build systems and relationships to set the foundation for our family ministry. She's been doing a phenomenal job. And we're already seeing growth in our younger families. And I'm praying that we have the opportunity to bring 2 full-time interns on to Gloria Dei in January to not only assist Audrey, but to learn from her as she develops them and mentors them. And so in order for us to accomplish not only that decision and necessary upgrades and improvements in our main building, we are beginning this Immeasurably More capital campaign. If this is the first time you've heard about this, open your email, please. Please. There has been so much that's gone on about it, so don't admit it, but start opening it, okay? And we're beginning this Immeasurably More capital campaign, asking God if he would show up immeasurably more than we ever could ask or imagine, as we're raising people, not money, we're raising people, raising the joy of generosity, the grace of giving, that will result in raising $5.5 million above and above our regular giving over the next 3.5 years. It's going to be a critical decision for you to join me and the leaders of Gloria Dei to move forward in faith, trusting in God's grace, his protection, an opportunity for us to grow in our understanding of stewardship, our view of money, generosity, and trust in God's provision. And so during these next 5 weeks, the month of October, we're going to be hearing from God's word about how he shows up in immeasurably more ways in the life of his people. So I'd ask you to open your Bibles, turn to Joshua chapter 3. Joshua chapter 3, we hear about a critical decision in the life of God's chosen people. And as you're looking it up, let me give you a little context of this section of Scripture. It's on page 179 if you have the Bibles in front of you. The book of Joshua deals with much more than ancient history. It's what God did for centuries ago for the Jews. It's about my life. It's about your life. It's about the life of the church today. It's about what God wants to do in and through us for the here and now for those who trust in him. It's about a victory of faith and glory to God when his people love and trust and obey him. You see, we've been saved by grace through faith to live with Jesus forever. God sent his son to redeem us, claim us as his own. We are baptized into Christ. Our identity is in him, in Christ Jesus, and him crucified and him resurrected. And as we live out our lives as baptized children of God, redeemed and loved by him, we are his beloved. We are his masterpiece. We celebrate his grace and forgiveness in our lives on a daily basis. And the goal is to put away the guilt, fear, and shame and live in his grace. And he's given us the Holy Spirit so that we can have this abundant life in him. And as I read the book of Joshua, I'm reminded about a quote that I read early on in ministry. I don't know who I got it from. It sounds Max Lucadoism, but I will say it is. It says, in life, we can be an overcomer or we're overcome. We're either a victim or a victor, a winner or a whiner. God saved us by his grace to be his own and live in him with him forever. He did not save us to sit back, eat bonbons, and watch life go by. He saved us to make us ambassadors of the gospel as we move forward in faith, to claim our inheritance in Jesus Christ. For Israel, it was the promised land. For us, it's heaven. And if you look one page over, Joshua chapter 1, Moses gave Joshua a command and a promise in this transition of leadership. Look what Joshua 1:9 says. Have I not commanded you? Here's a command. Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened. Do not be dismayed. Why did he say that? The dude is taking over Moses' job. You know, the guy that the 10 plagues, the Red Sea, wow. And the promise, the end of this verse, the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Remember 40 years earlier? Joshua was one of the 12 spies that were sent across in the promised land, and they were supposed to report back to the nation of Israel what was all there. This was 40 years after they'd been freed from Egyptian slavery and captivity. You know, the whole Red Sea thing, and fed by manna and quail. And they were to take possession of Canaan. And the Israelites sent out 12 spies to check it out. So what's out there? 12 spies returned to Moses and reported the land was indeed flowing with milk and honey. But 10 of the spies made a critical decision and lived in fear and discouraged the people by saying that Israel was not strong enough to overcome the enemy, that there were giants living in that land. This was a critical decision for the life of Israel. Do they trust God, that the promised land is theirs, or do they believe the 10 spies? Well, they chose the 10 spies. And even though God had done miraculous things for them, they forgot. And so instead of overcoming the land that was promised to them by God, they were overcome by the land. Instead of claiming victory in God's promises and moving forward in faith, they became the victims. And instead of winning, they turned to whining. The nation of Israel made a decision to listen to those faithless spies, and as a result of Israel's lack of faith in God's protection, provision, and care, they were not allowed to enter the promised land for another additional 40 years until that generation of people had died off. Joshua 3 is 40 years later. The mantle of leadership has been passed from Moses to Joshua. The national dream of a homeland has been the central focus of 2 complete generations of Israelites. Time has come, another critical decision. It's time to get their feet wet. What do I mean by that? Look at Joshua chapter 3. Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and they set out from Shittim. And they came to the Jordan, he and all the people of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over. At the end of 3 days, the officers went through the camp and commanded the people, as soon as you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God being carried by the Levitical priest, then you shall set out from your place and follow it. Yet there shall be a distance between you and it, about 2,000 cubits in length. Do not come near it, in order that you may know the way you shall go, for you have not passed this way before. Let the Lord God, the ark of the covenant, lead you there. Then Joshua said to the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. And Joshua said to the priests, take up the ark of the covenant, pass on before the people. So they took up the ark of the covenant, and they went before the people. And then the Lord said to Joshua, Today I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, that all may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. And as for you, command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant, when you come to the brink of the waters of the Jordan, you shall stand still in the Jordan. Here's the thing they're supposed to do. Grab the ark of the covenant, and remember, you can't touch it or you'll die. Walk in front of the people, let the people see the presence of the Lord is going in front of them, and then go to the Jordan and flood stage and stand there. Get your feet wet. Think about it. The end of the wilderness wandering is about to happen. In 3 days, they're going on the greatest adventure of their lives. They have no idea what lies ahead of them. They have no idea what great works God's going to do on behalf of them to possess this land. I want you to think about it. They would see the walls of fortified cities, Jericho, fall down before their very eyes. Complete armies destroyed by Gideon and his 300 men. They would see an enemy so terrified them, they would just run. And then they begin to enter God's rest. But there was this barrier, the Jordan River. It's at flood stage. No means to get across this body of water. Could be as wide as a mile at flood stage. They can't swim across, can't build enough rafts or boats to transport over 1 million people. They don't have time to build a bridge. No boats, no bridge, no resources. What do? How do you cross this physical barrier before the promise becomes a reality? The instructions: grab the ark, go stand in the water. That's all. Now, I don't know about y'all, I need a little more detail than that. I'd like some plans. I'd like to have them looked at by an architect, and I'd like to have some other things. OSHA needs to check that out also, and let's just figure out how this is all going to work. No. He says, be obedient. I'm thinking, like, are you serious? Look how Joshua continues, verse 9. And Joshua said to the people of Israel, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. And Joshua said, here is how you shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive out before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Ammonites, the Jebusites, and all other ites. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is passing over before you into the Jordan. Now therefore take 12 men from the tribes of Israel, from each tribe a man. And when the soles of the feet of the priests bearing the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off from flowing, and the waters coming down from above shall stand in one heap. Joshua doesn't give him some kind of religious pep talk. He says, just be obedient. Trust the Lord. Critical decision. Verse 14. So when the people set out from their tents to pass over the Jordan, with the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people. And as soon as those bearing the ark had come as far as the Jordan, the feet of the priests bearing the ark were dipped into the brink of the water. Now the Jordan overflows all its banks to this time of the harvest. The waters coming down from above stood and rose up in a heap very far away at Adam, the city that is beside Zarethan. And those flowing down toward the sea of Arabah, the salt sea, were completely cut off. And the people passed over opposite Jericho. Now the priests bearing the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firmly on the dry ground in the midst of the Jordan, and all Israel was passing over on dry ground until all the nation finished passing over the Jordan. It didn't make sense. Stand in the water and it will stop flowing. Do you trust me? They had to trust in the word of God that he would provide for their safety. I got to tell you, 5.5 million is a big number. And there's some things like, oh, Lord, that's a big number. Will I be faithful? Will I trust in God's care, trust and provision? Do I believe in the vision of this congregation to reach the kids for the next generation? If you take a look at Scripture and you look at Hebrews chapter 11, there was folks, everyday folks, men, women, different backgrounds, different training, different personalities, different ways of serving God. But they all had one thing common. They believed God's promises and they were obedient. Women of faith who got their feet wet. Glory Day, it's time to get our feet wet. It's time for us to trust in God that he will do immeasurably more in our lives than we could ever ask or imagine. I want to close with this. I want you to turn to Ephesians chapter 3. Ephesians chapter 3, verses 20 to 21 are our theme verse for this entire campaign. But it actually is a closing of a prayer that I've been praying for Gloria Day probably the last year. In Ephesians chapter 3, beginning with verse 14, Paul has been praying for the people of Ephesus. It's the second prayer that he wrote. The first one was in chapter 1. This is the second one. And that the people would grow in their faith and see their role as disciples of Jesus who live out the Great Commission as a disciple who makes disciples who make disciples. As I've been praying about how do we help more people live life with Jesus every day, how can we help our kids live out their faith in the spaces where they live and where they learn? So I'm going to personalize this prayer because I believe it's a prayer for Gloria Day as well. Here's Paul's words. For this reason, what's the reason? Well, because the mystery of God is revealed that the salvation is for all people, not just the Jews. For this reason, I bow before the Father from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named, that according to the riches of his glory, he may grant you to be strengthened with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ, Gloria Day, may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray you, Gloria Day, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ. Man, I pray every Sunday morning that every person that comes through these doors will experience God's grace in whatever way, form, shape it could be. I want you to know how high, wide, deep the love of Christ is for you. And to know, Gloria Day, that this love surpasses knowledge. That you, Gloria Day, may be filled to the measure of the fullness of God. And then look how Paul ends this. It's a benediction. It's a conclusion. It's like the end of the Lord's Prayer because God's got the power to do it. Look what he writes. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than we could ever ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. To him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. I asked Omar Aguilar, our director of contemporary worship, if he would find some songs for us in this campaign. And good old Rick Rosenhagen challenged him even further and said, why don't you write a song, Omar? And he did. And I'm so thankful that Omar and David Cervantes, who's part of our facility crew, are going to share that with you, because I want you to know that in all things, God is working through his people. This campaign is not about fundraising, it's about faith raising. It's about people raising. It's about developing the health and growth of our congregation so that we might live our lives in him, so that we can get our feet wet, so that we can see God will do immeasurably more in our hearts, lives, and faith than he could ever ask or imagine.